Quorum is present, so I will call this meeting of the Madison Plan Commission of August 7th, 2023 to order. First, we will get some information from our technical facilitator. Jesse?
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do the best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After all registrants speak, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. First item on our agenda is public comment, and I don't believe we have any public comments. Is that correct, Kevin? Okay,
That's
great.
correct.
Then we'll move on to communications, disclosures, and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Do we have any disclosures or recusals? Seeing no raised hands, we'll move on. The minutes of the July 24th regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Solheim. Seconded by Commissioner McCahill. And I will assume unanimous consent unless Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. I'll be abstaining, not having been present at the last meeting.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. I will assume unanimous consent with the one abstention unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously with one abstention. Next is the schedule of upcoming meetings. We have a regular meeting on August 28th, another one on September 18th, 2023 at 5:30, and those will be virtual. Then we have a special meeting on Thursday, September 7th, 2023 at 5 p.m. And staff has requested for a number of reasons that be a virtual meeting. So that will be held virtually. And just to note, I'm unable to be at either of the September meetings. So thank you, Vice Chair Solheim, who will be chairing those meetings. Next is the consent agenda. It has been the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by the various cities' departments, and on which the applicant accepts those conditions. And there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to those items. The items that are proposed for the consent agenda tonight are agenda item 4, which is for referral to the August 28th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting pending a recommendation by the Urban Design Commission. Agenda item 2, Legistar 79119. authorizing the execution of 3 electric transmission line easements by the City of Madison in favor of American Transmission Company and its manager, ATC Management, granting easement rights for an existing transmission line located on a portion of the properties at 3509 Webb Avenue, 513 Jacobson Avenue, and 699 Mayfair Avenue, located in District 12 and District 15. Also for the consent agenda, agenda item 5, Legistar 78636, located at 925 through 995 Applegate Road, District 14, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish 2 commercial buildings. Agenda item 6, Legistar 78637, located at 1145 North Sherman Avenue, District 12, consideration of a conditional use to allow a nightclub in an existing multi-tenant commercial building. Of those items which are before us, proposed for the consent agenda, are there any requests for separation? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Commissioner Solheim. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Figueroa Cole. And I will open the public hearing and close the public hearing since there are no registrants for those items. And we will move to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent on the consent agenda unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Moving on, the next item on our agenda is agenda item 3, Legistar 78423, located at 314 Junction Road, District 9, consideration of a conditional use in an approved planned development district specific implementation plan for an animal daycare in an existing mixed use building. First, we will hear from Plan Commission staff, Lisa McNabolo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the applicant is proposing to establish an animal daycare in a tenant space in an existing mixed-use building that has first floor commercial tenants and 96 residential units. And there are, a variety of commercial uses located in the building, which include retail, service, health, and restaurant uses. And I do just want to note that a revised letter of intent and floor plan were submitted on July 31st. And my staff report will focus primarily on the information provided there. So the proposed capacity is 20 to 30 dogs, and the dogs will be kept in 7 kennel areas with 4 dogs per kennel. The floor plan also shows 2 exercise areas. And the applicant says that they intend to use a gate system to separate the areas. There is no outdoor exercise area associated with the tenant space, and instead the dogs would be walked throughout the day in the surrounding neighborhood. Per the applicant, dogs that exhibit excessive barking would not return after a 24-hour trial period. And the application states that pet waste would be handled in accordance with city, state, and federal guidelines. There would be 6 employees, and the proposed hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And there is a parking area shared between all commercial tenants. They don't have designated parking spaces for each space. So the comprehensive plan recommends community mixed-use development for the site. And the proposed animal daycare is generally consistent with the recommended land use. So primarily, I'll just focus on conditional use standard number 3, which states that the uses, values, and enjoyment of other property in the neighborhood for purposes already established will not be substantially impaired or diminished in any foreseeable manner. And in this case, what we primarily considered were, potential noise from barking, and then the handling of pet waste. So, as the applicant has stated, if animals are exhibiting excessive behavior, they would choose to just not continue having that dog or their owner there as a client. And, I acknowledge that the letter of intent does refer to that 24-hour period, but the applicant is aware that this request is for an animal daycare, and that per the zoning ordinance, animal care is limited to 12 hours per day. An animal daycare also has to adhere to the supplemental regulations found in section 28.151, which states that the applicant shall submit at the time of permit application written procedures, which shall be followed for the life of the business, that must address the identification and correction of animal behavior that impacts surrounding uses, including excessive barking. And per the recommended conditions of approval, zoning staff will review and accept those written operating procedures. And we've done this for a couple of other animal daycares that have come in over the years where that those operating procedures are submitted as a part of sign-off. For pet waste, the applicant states that they're going to be handled in accordance with the city, state, and federal guidelines. And staff believe that the applicant should provide a more detailed plan for pet waste management to ensure that they're limiting potential impacts to surrounding properties. So staff did include a recommended condition of approval that states that the applicant will specify how indoor and outdoor pet waste will be removed and disposed of in those written operating procedures that are submitted to zoning. So that would be for planning staff approval. And the staff report also does refer to 3 other animal daycares in the city. And if requested, I can provide some additional information regarding those daycares. And generally, our recommendation from staff is that, if the facility is well managed and given the capacity of 30 dogs, that the proposed animal daycare can be found to meet the conditional use approval standards, and recommends that it be approved by the Plan Commission. And staff would just remind everyone here that if it is approved, that the Plan Commission retains continuing jurisdiction over the conditional use, and that if a complaint is filed, the Plan Commission could take further action as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We do have several registrants, so I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is Malik Shabazz, 314 Junction Road, Madison, in support, wishing to speak, representing the applicant. Malik, you have 3 minutes. Jesse, do you know what the
I think
problem
we
is?
are having some trouble with your audio. We're hearing kind of some noise, but not actually. You may want, if you're using like a microphone or a headset, you may want to unplug it and plug it back in and try that. Yeah, the best option I actually could suggest next is to leave the meeting and come back in and try with that. It sounds like there's an issue with the microphone.
Malik, if you could sign out and try signing back in, and then we will try calling on you again. In the meantime, we will go to the other registrants. The next registrant is Pete McCall, Harbortown Drive, Madison, opposed, wishing to speak. Pete, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm a resident of Unit 417, and I'd like to address some issues in the staff report. And I would add that the recommendation is subject to the input at the public hearing. And just as an initial matter, I think we all probably agree that dogs are man's, women's, and kids' best friends, unless there's a large number that are forced to occupy confined space with no exercise area beneath your home. We know that dogs bark, they play, they poop, they urinate, they can bite, and they usually have smells and odors. So I'd like to address the three ordinances that the staff person talked about. Section A1 deals with public health, safety, and general welfare. I see from the staff report that the fire department has not weighed in yet because they haven't had adequate plans to review. The issue of odor, urine, dog waste, and so forth really are going to be addressed in a plan that's yet to be submitted. And I think that for due consideration, we should have an opportunity to comment on those as opposed to just the staff doing it. In terms of safety, the commission should consider the neighborhood in which they walk dogs, and they should limit the number of dogs per staff members. And what happens in the wintertime when there's snow on the ground and blocking access to pathways. I think there should be a real concern about the number of dogs that are out in the neighborhoods, potential dog bites. And I would suggest that liability insurance for those dog bites be considered by the board. Under Section A3, the uses and values and enjoyment should not be diminished. The condo building, 91 of the residents have signed a petition opposing it. I'm not going to go into the rationale that's in the petition. There's an extra 20 that have opposed. There's nothing that no one has been in favor of it. And I would say in terms of value, I'm a licensed real estate broker, and I can tell you that if this use goes forward, there's going to be a diminished value of the units, which will cost each of the owners here substantial monies in the value of their property and will likely result in a reduction of tax base. The last one, Section 151, there really is no substantial written operating procedures here. And I would suggest that the board consider best practices by the national owners of daycare group as a model for that. There's a limitation that the staff is recommending on the number of dogs. I would require a certification.
Thank you, Pete. That concludes your available time. Our next registrant is Norman Green, Harbor Town Drive, Madison, opposed, wishing to speak. Norman, you have 3 minutes.
Chair, there's no person by that name in attendance.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to our next registrant, Janet Nahorn, Harbor Town Drive, Madison, opposed, wishing to speak. Janet, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name is Janet Nahorn, and I live at Junction Point Condominiums. One tenant of the commercial unit in our building is proposing to open an animal daycare called Pooch Tales. Their website promotes themselves as the premier bark park in Madison and lists services beyond their conditional use request of daycare, including pet grooming, dog breeding, and overnight boarding. Pooch Tail began construction without consulting our association, and over 77 units located directly above this development have signed onto a petition of opposition. We believe Pooch Tail has already reduced the enjoyment of our property, and if allowed to be fully operational, will impact our property values. Staff comments regarding this development indicated they reviewed 3 other developments which all received approval. 2 of those were in strip malls having no residential occupants, and the third was in an apartment building and already had an established second location and submitted substantial operation plans. The Madison General Ordinance 28.151 requires that the applicant submit operating procedures with their application. Pooch Tail only recently provided a letter of intent, which lists goals for the business and not operating procedures. The intention letter failed to mention the overnight boarding and being a bark park, both of which are promoted on their website. Having been the owner and operator of a successful kennel for 25 years, I know what it takes to operate this type of business. In no way has Poochtail submitted operating procedures. The applicant's intention letter proves they do not understand the business and as a result will cause undue harm to the animals, the humans living nearby, and the property itself. Furthermore, Madison General Ordinance 28.151(6A) states that all conditions listed must be present in order to approve. One of those explicitly states that an enjoyment of our property in the neighborhood will not be substantially impaired or diminished in any foreseeable manner. The commission overlooked what has already occurred by the applicant, which could be used to justify a denial. The applicant has caused 5 false fire alarms in less than a 30-day period. This resulted in the Madison Fire Department issuing a citation. By having no defined operating procedures and failing to properly build and run their business thus far, the Plan Commission should have enough evidence to deny the applicant's request. If allowed to open, Poochtail will further impair the enjoyment of the property by the owners in the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Our next registrant is Alan White, Harbor Town Drive, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Alan, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Well, I'm looking at the applicant's letter of intent, and I'd like to point out a few things that are completely inaccurate. First of all, in the very bottom, they make the statement that for noise mitigation, there's over 3.5 feet of concrete between our business and the residents who live there. That is absolutely untrue. The building does not have 3.5 feet concrete anywhere. That would be more like a bunker for avoiding a bomb. Certainly, that'd be great if the city had standards for noise mitigation, but the applicant was not required to do anything to mitigate sound in the walls or the floors of the building. So therefore, there's nothing there that's going to help. Beyond that, they mentioned above that their partner, Grooming Tail, says for the last 9 years, had a waste management plan. Well, if they do have that for the last 9 years, you think they would provide it in their documentation they provided the city. This is not a plan for action in terms of what was required by the city statute. It's more or less a bar napkin summary of their letter of intent, not an actionable plan that details their work in terms of waste mitigation and sound control. But further, Madison ordinance was changed effective in July of 2019. On July 2nd, 2019, adopted ordinance 19-00047 states that an animal daycare has to follow noise mitigation. Lisa McNable stated just a few minutes ago, if it is well managed, things should work out. Well, if and buts were candies and nuts, every day would be Christmas. But the fact of the matter is this business since February has had a permit pulled with the city and has had numerous fire code violations that have resulted in substantial inconvenience to the owners of the building, unit owners that is, because of all the false alarms. Back to that language though, the city actually struck out the language that would have made this standard more enforceable. In 2019, prior to the adoption of the new code, the language had said applicants shall submit at the time of permit application written operating procedures such as those recommended by the American Board and Kennel Association, ABKA, or the American Kennel Club. That language was struck by the city, so there is no longer a standard for the city to enforce. There is no standard currently on the books with the city ordinance in regard to waste mitigation either. So the fact that the city is saying now that they need to have a waste disposal plan to conform to city standards, which is what's listed in their application, there are no city standards, therefore there's nothing to hold them accountable to, therefore no enforcement. Beyond that, let's face it, Madison has ordinances that don't allow veterinarians to declaw cats and have regulations on our city parks in terms of where dogs can go. Yet, initially, this applicant was applying for 66 dogs in 3,000 square feet with no outdoor grooming or no outdoor exercise area. Even the current standards for the cats have an enforcement mechanism from the Board of Health. And that would be imperative.
Thank you, Alan. That concludes your available time. The next registrant, let's go back to Malik Shabazz. Is he on now, Jesse?
Yep, it looks like Malik, if we can try. Oh, yeah, it looks like you switched over to phone. Let's see if this works.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Malik, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm the operations manager for Pooch Tales. I just want to address all of the concerns immediately. First of all, we will not be housing 66 dogs. Second of all, we are in accordance with all city, state, and federal laws as far as disposal of waste for the dogs. Our partner, Grooming Tales, which has been there for over 9 years, has never received a noise complaint or anything to that effect. The violations that were caused by our contractor setting off the alarm, we apologize for. However, if anyone has ever dealt with bad contractors, you will know that they cause problems. I have sufficiently replaced all the fire heads, all of the fire extinguishers, and the violation with the city is no longer in order. I have also went as far as to apply an epoxy flooring to ensure that sanitation is at the highest grade. We will not be operating at full capacity, so the 30 dogs won't even be there for years. I want my staff to be fully trained, so the capacity that we'll be at is about maybe between 5 and 10 dogs. And this is to ensure that my staff is fully trained on how to interact with our guests. Also, we have the full support of the owner of the building. Greg is a very good friend of mine, and he wants us to be successful like all the rest of the businesses there. Anything that is required of us, I have diligently pursued to make sure that what the contractors did does not reflect on us. We only want to enhance that area and bring a service that is much needed to that area. Also, as far as noise ordinance, I specifically ordered sound dampening drywall when we were doing construction. So that is installed for the adjoining businesses next to us. As far as where I came up with the depth of the concrete that is there, that was from the owner, Greg. And as I said, he has given us our full support. He has also written a letter of support for us. All the other things, I apologize because we were using bad contractors. I am sorry that you guys had to leave your homes. I understand it was an inconvenience. However, this is a business, and sometimes things don't go hunky-dory all the time. Again, we apologize, but we are only here to enhance your lives and the lives of our guests. We really appreciate all the input, and we will be holding a neighborhood meeting to directly address all of these needs with the alderman, Nick Lee Conklin, so that you can get a better representation of what Pooch Tales is and how we operate. And I'd just like to say thank you for your time. And yes, ma'am. And that's all I have to really say.
Thank you very much. That does conclude your available time. We have some other registrants, Gail and Dennis Miller, Harbortown Drive, Madison opposed, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Yakov Schmigelman, also Harbortown Drive, not wishing to speak, available to answer questions. Steve Yang, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Polina Godovich, Harbortown Drive, not wishing to speak, opposed, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Are there questions of any of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if staff has any information about other precedents on these type of businesses within multi-use units. I found a couple of them around town, and I just wanted to know if we had like conditional use for them too.
Yeah, so I did look at, again, as I referred to in the staff report, 3 other, I guess, similar facilities, and they might not all be the same. There were 2 that were in multi-tenant commercial buildings, but I looked to those because we approved one at 416 Monona Drive. That was a multi-tenant commercial building with no outdoor exercise area. There was another multi-tenant commercial building one with a 90 square foot outdoor exercise area. And then there's one at 502 South Park Street, which is a mixed use building with commercial on the first floor and a few stories above. And that was approved in 2015 with an outdoor exercise area of 300 square feet. A similar capacity in terms of square feet per dog as a comparison. And I did actually reach out to the police department records office to see if there had been any service calls at those 3 locations in the last 3 years. And the 502 South Park Street, there was 1 service call for a noise complaint in the last 3 years. And it doesn't specify, it doesn't give a lot of background. It doesn't actually even say, oh, it was a dog barking, but it is the address associated with the doggy daycare. But that was the only facility that that's had a service call related to noise in the last 3 years.
Thank you. That was going to be my second question. So thanks for answering the noise, the police department reports. But when we issue those permits, were they conditional use or
Yes.
not? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
And there might be other facilities in the city that we don't have a conditional use on file for, or they didn't meet some of the criteria I was looking for when I was trying to evaluate the application.
Thank you. That's all I got for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Field.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if staff could speak to the standard or condition rather about the removal of pet waste and outdoor pet waste. Will staff look for anything in particular in that plan in the operating procedures submitted to zoning, or is the intent of the condition just to account for it somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think my intent was, to explicitly state that you are picking up and disposing of waste. And, I know we had one that was approved where they just say, we pick up after our pets, we dispose of it in the waste receptacles available on site. And so it's just a little more explicit because, I don't know what the state and federal guidelines are, for that. So I'm more interested in just having them kind of state that for the record of what they will and won't be doing.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any follow-ups, Alder Field?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Alder Conklin.
Thank you, Chair. And I wanted to ask Lisa, you saw the last 2 comments that came in. I sent those to you, and they really referred to the state statutes of the 28.151, the operating procedure. Do you feel like those plans have been met?
Well, I think based on what they've provided, I think that they would have to provide some additional information. I mean, looking at what we've received for other animal daycares, they do vary in terms of detail. We have had a 10-page one, we've had a 1-page one. And again, I think part of it, the supplemental regulation does specifically call out like excessive animal barking. So I've seen that, they say, we are trained in like dog behavior, how to manage dog relationships. So, we do defer to the operators of the business, to use the experience they have in running a business. But so we don't have specific guidelines in our own ordinances where we are looking for something in particular. But ultimately, zoning staff looks to that to ensure that they're complying with, mostly excessive, and it gets the impact to surrounding areas. It isn't specific. It's not asking for, a bulleted list of items. I think that I would expect that there will be more information in the operating procedures specifically about addressing those kinds of behaviors.
Okay. And also, can you speak on what's already there already? What is that Junction Road? What do they do? And how is that similar to this business that they're trying to open?
Are you referring to the site as a whole or the dog grooming that's there?
Yeah, the dog grooming as the dog, what is it, Grooming Tales?
Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, it's a grooming facility. So, they're not offering daycare, but they might have pets that stay there longer than the grooming service happens. But it's just a grooming facility.
And this is more where they can stay longer, but not overnight. This is just for within the periods of 8 to 4, because I think that's where a lot of this confusion came from. At first, everyone thought this was an overnight dog care facility. And I want to make that clear that this is not an overnight dog care facility. It's still, what do you call doggy daycare? So it's during the day care, animal care during the day of 8 to 4 is what they say for their operating hours. So they will not be housed or boarded, just like the dog coming there to get groomed for an hour or to be watched for an hour or 2 hours. But that's why I just want to make clear that there's already something in Junction Road right now that, as there is a grooming facility, and that this facility, Pooch Tales, is not going to be an overnight dog kennel.
Do you have further questions, or did you want Lisa to validate that?
Right. That was my question, of making it clear that we have a clear understanding that there's already a grooming facility here in the same spot, and that this will not be considered an overnight facility for animals.
So Lisa, can you confirm that?
Yep. Yeah. So there is a grooming facility in this building, and the animal daycare is defined in the zoning ordinance and specifically says that animal care will not be provided for more than 12 hours per day. One point of clarification, just to make, is that the letter of intent does state that the hours of operation are 8 to 4, but it's not a condition of approval where we say that they shall operate at those hours, and that as long as they're not exceeding 12 hours per day of animal care, they would be in compliance with the zoning ordinance. And then also, just to clarify, because there was some confusion, with the original letter of intent and these things, that there is also the condition of approval from zoning that says it's no dog boarding is allowed.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. Did you have any further questions, Alder Conklin?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. Lisa, you can probably answer these. We heard the applicant state that it might be many years before they were to have as many as 30 dogs, and he was estimating 5 to 10 in the near future. We need to evaluate this as if it were an application for 30 dogs, though, correct? Wouldn't that be your advice?
Yes, I would advise that, considering how it would operate under full capacity.
Right. Okay, thanks. And one more question. If this were to be approved, and as you mentioned, Plan Commission has continuing jurisdiction, if there were complaints about, dogs being boarded overnight or noise complaints, et cetera, can you describe who people would talk to and what that process might look like?
Sure. Yeah. I have not gone through a kind of continuing jurisdiction request or case, so I might defer to Kevin on that one.
Sure. Sure. A couple different items. I guess the first question, if it was determined that there was a zoning violation, that boarding was occurring and boarding is not allowed by the zoning, that would be something that building inspection and zoning staff would have to do an investigation. That would be separate of any continuing jurisdiction because that's a zoning enforcement issue. As far as the continuing jurisdiction process, there's actually two phases. The first phase is the Plan Commission would hold a hearing and gather evidence to see if there was reasonable cause to then have a formal consideration on either adding conditions or potentially taking other actions on the conditional use. So it's actually a two-step process. There's an initial hearing, and then the Plan Commission, based on that, could vote to bring it back to a public hearing and reconsideration of the item.
Thanks. That was a good clarification. Those were my questions.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Going back to kind of the letter of intent and the operating procedures, it was, pretty bare bones, and you mentioned that you see kind of a variety of detail in that from other applicants. I know that that's not specified in our ordinance as to what needs to be included, but I'm thinking even of when we ask for a management plan from some of the large apartment developments that have a rooftop pool and all that, we have kind of established a set of things that we like to see in that management plan and that are reviewed by the alder as well. Would it be reasonable to have a condition, I know you added a condition about the waste disposal, but to add other items to that operations plan, things like detail on day-to-day operations, the qualifications of the staff, the specific process for evaluating dogs and excessive barking, or anything else that may have been useful in other operational plans from other daycare providers that could add some clarity here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the Plan Commission wanted to maybe add a condition or modify the condition to ask specifically for certain information, that would ensure that it is in there, and that all the folks that registered will know that those specific things will be addressed as well.
Okay, thank you.
The next question, Commissioner Shepherd.
Hi, yeah, Lisa, I guess two things here. One, Malik brought up the issue of holding a neighborhood meeting, something along those lines, sort of later. Was there ever any sort of neighborhood community building meeting held prior to tonight? Was there ever a meeting that you know about?
I'm not aware of a neighborhood meeting taking place with the applicant and residents, and the city did not host a neighborhood meeting.
Okay. And my second sort of follows along with some of the earlier comments about, because with Malik, he brought up a number of points that, how can I put it, really weren't highlighted earlier. One, he talked about the soundproofing. He said that he's putting in soundproofing on the sides, but he didn't address soundproofing like on the roof, between them and once again, neighbors above. That seems like that would be an issue in terms of, and I think you've already mentioned it in terms of waste management. Their waste management plan is very thin at this point, I would say. There seems to be, it would be nice to know internal waste management plan, external waste management plan. Because if you look at sort of outside there, again, and you note this in the staff report, there really isn't any area designated for the business. And the third thing is just in their plan, they talk about sort of walking the dogs. I think it would be good to have a plan for walking the dogs. Where are you going to walk the dogs? Because and I'm just throwing these ideas out here right now, because where the property is located, where the business is located, there's going to be a lot of, how can I put this, contact with vehicles, right? There are driveways and that sort of thing. So even in terms of if they're going to walk dogs, given this location, I think it may be good to have a walking the dog plan, something that would, for the business, it could help the business, but also it could help, again, enhance meeting a standard number 3, that the operation of this business will not, again, deter or diminish, once again, the enjoyment of the property and that sort of stuff. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepherd. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Lisa, so to follow up on Commissioner Shepherd's questions there. So when I look at the location on Park Street, which is the multi-use building, I mean, there's hardly any space in there either. It seems everything's so tight. And I kind of wonder to where, what is the process to get the dogs out? Where do they play outside? They play outside. Like, there don't seem to be any space for that. I mean, it's a very, very tight lot. So do we require all that kind of backup information or planning information from that facility, or do they have a plan on regards, a detailed plan like that on that facility?
Yeah, so they would have been required to submit the operating management plan, assuming that the supplemental regulation was not amended. I guess I can't say that for sure. And then, they do have a limited outdoor exercise area, but it's not something that is required by code. I'm trying to see if maybe I can pull that up to see what the approval letter says specifically about any conditions.
I mean, while you look at that, I just want to clarify, I don't disagree with Commissioner Shepherd's feedback, and neither do I disagree with Commissioner Solheim to get something to require a plan, but I also want to be consistent with other locations that were already approved by this commission. And I was here, so I don't know what happened then.
Yeah, so looking at the approval letter for the 502 South Park Street location, they were required to submit the same operating procedures as well. So they had the same condition of approval. I mean, I think, again, they may have provided information like what Commissioner Shepherd had mentioned, but as I mentioned before, the language in the ordinance is not specific about asking for information beyond the excessive barking.
Thank you.
Did you have further questions, Alder?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions of staff? Are there any other questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Solheim.
I will move that the Plan Commission finds the standards for conditional use are met and approve the request for an animal daycare at 314 Junction Road, subject to the conditions of the staff report, as well as an edit to the condition for the waste management plan, that include a full operating procedures plan that includes additional detail on day-to-day operations, qualifications of staff, waste management, any sound mitigation features, the plan for walking dogs, and other details deemed relevant by staff.
Seconded by Alder Figueroa Cole. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Solheim?
Just briefly, I think, as was kind of mentioned, with the changes made in the conditions in the draft report and the additional condition, I don't see a substantial reason to deny this conditional use. And we do have some precedent from similar uses in other mixed use buildings. I think the key is getting more details on that plan and then having the opportunity to maintain continuous enforcement in the future if there are issues.
Thank you. Are there other comments and input on this motion and item? Commissioner Heck.
Thanks. I just wanted to add one thought, as well as say that I will be supporting this motion, and I thank Commissioner Solheim for bringing all that together in a well-crafted motion. But I wanted to remind us of something that we heard Lisa mention, is that there are many other doggy daycare facilities that around the city that did not require conditional use approval. I can think of one in my neighborhood that's been there for quite a few years, and that I know of. I used to be alder for that district. I don't know of any complaints that have ever come forth. It is in the ground floor of a mixed use building. So I think that the problems, although possible, could be generally handled by the good conditions and any follow-up by staff if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Conklin.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I did get to meet with Malik today. We had a very good conversation. We do tentatively have September 14th, Thursday, September 14th, for a neighborhood meeting. We're trying to coordinate a couple different schedules, but they are willing to meet with the neighborhood, meet with the community, and really try to get on the right foot, because I think they feel like, again, with some of the errors that happen with the contractor and the alarms going off, like they're being blamed for that, and they weren't even there. They had no control over that. Yes, it was unfortunate. Yes, it bothered a lot of people. Yes, they got violated for it, but they have corrected the problem now. So I think they want to continue to correct this problem and be active business owners in District 9. They feel like they have been in business with the grooming tail people, the grooming business. They feel like they've been in business with them. They have the support. They're basically expanding their business, they feel like. So they want to be welcomed into the community, and I think they're willing to try to do these different things. Again, like I said, host this neighborhood meeting, fix the contractor problem, and still try to fix the issues that we have with the application process and many processes along the way. So, you know, you guys know, you've seen the opposition to this. You got the petition. So I'm literally here in the middle, giving the facts from both sides, from the constituents and from the business owner. This is the life of the alder. So I just want to say that, you know, I'm supporting the business owners and trying to help them navigate the system. I'm supporting my constituents and voicing their concerns and bringing those to the table. But I support it and I don't support it, if that makes any sense. So the owners are willing to work with us. They want to be a part of the community, and, you know, people make mistakes, things happen, and we got to give people a chance. So that's just where I stand.
Thank you, Alder. Any other comments or input before we come to a vote? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is agenda item 7, Legistar 78910, creating sections of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 970 North Gammon Road, 19th Alder District, from Planned Development District to Limited Mixed Use District located in District 19. And Kevin Furco is going to give us an overview. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members of the Plan Commission. I'm going to do a very short overview on this item tonight. Just for a little bit of table setting, the site is part of a larger plan development that was established several decades ago. So it's a multi-property PD. When the development team, who is seeking to establish an acupuncture and a massage studio on site, spoke to planning and zoning staff, different ideas were talked about how to potentially incorporate that use. The PD did not allow that as a listed use. The only non-residential use that was allowed, as my understanding, was daycare was the only one that was allowed at this site. So the path right now that they're proceeding is to take this piece of the PD and rezone it to conventional zoning. And it's the LMX zoning district, the limited mixed use zoning district, which actually isn't widely applied throughout the city. There's only a handful of sites with that zoning. The intent of the zoning of this zoning district is really a limited commercial district. It's much less intense. Plan Commission sees several types of districts in the NMX or the TSS or CCT mixed use districts. This is a far less zoning intense district in terms of the allowed uses, both conditional and permitted uses. And so the approach here is to take this piece of property and to zone it into this the least intensive mixed use district that's in the zoning code. As noted in the staff report, the area is recommended largely for residential. There isn't a specific neighborhood plan that covers this area. And the report that was prepared by Colin Punt does note that there are exceptions in language that talk about allowing for limited non-residential within residential areas. And the LMX zoning district is probably, arguably the best district to do that, just because it is so much less intense than the other districts. The use itself would be a permitted use as part of the LMX district. So right now, the Plan Commission is not considering a conditional use, just the zoning change, which the Plan Commission will be advisory to the Common Council. I would note that there is a comment of opposition that came in to the report, largely talks about traffic impacts. Note there isn't a specific comment related to traffic impacts for this particular use, although Sean Malloy did note, our colleague in traffic engineering, that daycare uses are generally more intensive than he was anticipating than at least the use that's being discussed right now. But zoning to LMX district would allow the conditional and permitted use districts as part of that list. So with that overview, staff believes the standards can be found met. And does recommend approval, but we're available to answer questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We have one registrant, Leslie Elkins, Coho Street, Madison, in support and wishing to speak, representing TLC Solutions Wisconsin, LLC. Leslie, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, thank you. As most of the information I wanted to share has been already shared, but I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the business that would be going in. The business, the property would be owned by TLC Solutions Wisconsin. However, the business going in would be Isthmus Wellness, which is a business that has been in the community for many years. It's a very quiet and respectful business. The people that generally frequent are very respectful, and the interior of the current business is very calm and serene, and a very conscientious customer base that will certainly follow all rules and be very respectful of the neighborhood. The proposal doesn't have any changes to the exterior of the building, so the neighborhood would not be impacted in that way during the process of changing it over from a daycare. And I would also note that I would imagine this would be less impactful from a noise standpoint, as the activities being conducted there would be primarily interior. And also in reviewing the recommended plan, the business has every indication of going along with the conditions that are listed, and really looks forward to improving the community in this way, hopefully upon a approval today. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Leslie. Are there any questions of our registrant? Any questions of our registrant? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Questions of staff? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Solheim.
I will move that the Plan Commission forward the zoning map amendment from PD to LMX to the Common Council with a recommendation of approval subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seconded by Alder Field. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Solheim?
No, thank you.
Okay. Are there any comments in regard to the motion? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. The next item is business by members. Is there any business by members? Yes, Commissioner Solheim.
I sent a note, but I just want to note for the commission that I'll be absent from the August 28th meeting.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Anything else? Any other business by members? Seeing no raised hands, we'll move on to the Secretary's report. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Just the items on the Secretary's report are noted on the agenda. As far as the recent Common Council actions, would note among the more significant ones that the Council has seen after Plan Commission consideration was the repealing and recreating of the subdivision regulations that were approved with the Plan Commission's recommendations at its July 25th meeting. And then just noting the other approvals that have gone through are listed on the agenda. And then just note the items that are coming up, a few of the items that are coming up at both the August 28th and September 18th meetings. Note that there is on the square, the Wisconsin History Center redevelopment project on the square was referred a couple of meetings ago and will be here for the Plan Commission's advisory recommendation. I'm sorry, they're an approving body, and they'll be seeing that on August 28th. There's also a variety of developments here. There's an alteration on West Wilson Street for a large development that was approved. Exterior lighting alterations that'll be before the Plan Commission. And also another large project that evening will be the development out on Milwaukee Street near Fair Oaks Avenue. And this is a large establishment of a plat and rezoning, which is the significant implementation related to the neighborhood plan that was adopted in that area about 3 years ago. So that'll be part of the consideration for that one. Moving ahead to the 18th of September, there's going to be a PD, GDP related to a funeral home development, one that a GDP was approved earlier this year. And then another traditional residential neighborhood master plan out on Silver Maple Drive, and Little Dove Trail is also on the agenda. So that's what I have for this evening's Secretary's report, unless there's any questions for me.
I don't see any raised hands, so it doesn't look like it. The next item would be a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Solheim. Seconded by Alder Field. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, we are adjourned, and I will see you on August 28th, except for Commissioner Solheim. So see you then. It looks like it could be a long agenda, so get ready. Take care. Thank you.